Welcome to the Film Steins, the Double Feature Podcast. Join us as we unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with their cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/filmsteins. We offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level, where the $5 tier will grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Film Steins, where movies are more than just entertainment. They're an experience.
They're an experience.
All around you. And welcome back to another episode of the Film Steins. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today I'm joined by Captain Lucy Walker.
Hello, everyone.
Remember, we post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with brand new episodes of the Film Steins. Some recent episodes include Bong Joon-ho's Mother, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes of the movie, Sasquatch Sunset, the first Mad Max, and Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Go rate us on Apple Podcasts. Come subscribe for $1. Request a movie for free. Just go over there and request a movie.
Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at HempvilleCBD.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
But today we are discussing George Miller and George Ogilvie's 1985 film, Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome, sometimes called Mad Max 3. Never heard anyone actually say that, but it is the third, I guess. Well, we made it through the original trilogy. This is the supposed oddball that a lot of people like to point to. I think they are all equally very strange films.
I agree.
In their own way. This one is the more neutered one, I guess, as far as adulty tone and whatnot. But it really doesn't change much of the overall strangeness of what Mad Max is. And it's also famously Roger Ebert's favorite of the trilogy. I'll tell you right off the bat, this is very easily the weakest Mad Max. Funny enough, though, and it's generally the unfavored one, but it's funny because I do think this is probably the most influential Mad Max in design and just kind of post-apocalyptic flair and personality within characters. I see the most fallout out of this in another series called Rage over the other two films, and I really enjoy a lot of the world-building elements and new kind of faces we have here. Tina Turner's character is fun. Aunty Entity, fun name. We get a lot of those, though. Master Blaster, I don't know if this is where the visual comes from of taking two people and having a brains and bronze kind of person merge into one, but I like the visuals, very cool, obviously. The town running on pig shit, very fun. The biblical kind of tangent plot with the children and the way they speak is very fun. But just the overall of how we get from place to place and why it all happens is a little too Sunday cartoony, I think, for me. And no, Jedediah, the pilot, is not the same as the guy or captain.
But he's the same actor.
It is the same actor,
okay.
Yes.
That's why I was confused. But they didn't acknowledge each other, so I was like, okay, he's not the same gyro captain. He's a different character here, but the same actor.
Yes, and I do think this movie does hurt the image of Mad Max in one key way. He feels less like a legend, kind of mythical character here, and he's more of a proper protagonist going on kind of an epic adventure instead of being this kind of passerby who just kind of stumbles into it. You've made it through most of the gauntlet of Mad Max. We have one more stop in preparation for Furiosa. Very excited about that. You've discovered a series that speaks to you on some level. That's very fun. How did you feel about the more contentious of the original three?
I think you might be surprised that I'm leaning towards this being my favorite of the three. Or you're not surprised and it was very obvious while we were watching. But I agree, the tone of this movie is definitely different from the other two. But the other two movies have a very different tone to them as well, that I don't agree with people saying that this is the oddball.
Yeah, no, totally. I think they are all equally very strange.
Yeah.
And even the inclusion of Fury Road doesn't really correct any of that. They're all very strange as a collection.
Yes, I definitely agree. But I liked it. The world building here is crazier than the other two films, but that might partially be due to the evolution of this dystopian world. So we had to get crazier, we had to get creative. So I might attribute it to that more than we decided to get crazier with this film.
That is one of the very cool linear evolutions that we see in these first three films.
Yes. I also think this movie is a little bit deeper and more emotional. We have a couple more scenes that almost make me cry. I also think there's more focus on character interaction and maybe a little bit more character depth, which I enjoy that. And it felt like we had a lot more action in this movie, but now that I say that, I think there's just more going on than the other films and not necessarily more action sequences, but it just felt more actiony because of everywhere we went. But I think it has a lot more personality that I liked compared to the other two films, because we also have this hint of brutality that I like, but we also have some comedy that we don't really have in the other films at all, which I also like. I don't know, I think this movie just felt more clever. But I like what you said about it being kind of Sunday cartoony, because this whole franchise seems like it's a cartoon, because I guess with the exception of the first movie, but it just feels like, who is Max going to save now? Stay tuned for next week's episode and find out, you know? But I liked it. I don't think I quite agree with what you said about the plot, though, because I think that's my favorite part about this, how well it flowed, how getting him from point A to point B flowed so much better than the other two films, especially the first one. We didn't have these weird scenes where we just needed to add this scene for like one split second so we can know what's going on. Like, no. He gets his shit stolen. He goes to find it. He makes a deal to get his stuff. He fights. He loses. He gets saved by some kids. Then he does some saving. Like, it's very boom, 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 boom. And I like that a lot. But to agree with what you did say, is that it feels very cartoony.
Yeah, we seem to sacrifice this so-called allegorical thing we had going on in Mad Max 2 for more of a cartoony, maybe Star Wars-y thing. Mad Max 2 didn't feel lived in. It felt like there was a lesson to be learned here kind of thing. And now we have proper world building, a society of some sort, government, trade, other peoples. We have this tribe of children. It blows open the door of what you thought you might have known about the world of Mad Max, and gives the future life in more ways than you could ever really imagine. Something, not unlike something like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, and having this landscape for infinite possibilities. And so, yes, we get more character, we get more dialogue, and you start to see this divide happen right before your eyes between the different kind of Mad Maxes, and challenges you with, well, what is Mad Max? Because, yeah, I mean, Toe Cutter, Humongous, and now just the entirety of Beyond the Thunderdome, very cartoony. But the tones are all very different. The plot structure is very different. The way they're made, the editing, it's just very challenging and very diversive. And like Mad Max, forces its tribal fans to form their own factions.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. And part of me wonders if it's intentional or if it's just the nature of these three films from the production side, from having them come to life. Because the first film it was so low budget that I imagine things had to get cut somewhere and things had to happen a certain way to be able to make it within the budget. And then the second film, you have George Miller and maybe a little bit more true to his vision, and he has the money to now make it happen. But then you have the third film with George Miller and a second director. I don't recognize any of the work he's done. It's a lot of Australian things, I believe. So I can't really comment on that. So of course you're going to have a different vision, introducing a new person into your vision.
Yeah, the introduction of a second director I thought was very odd. It indicates to me the acknowledgement that the scope of the movie might be a little much. And supposedly Ogilvie was more involved in the direction of the actors, and George Miller was more involved in the action sequences and the writing and whatnot. But I will say, not that duo directors suffer from this necessarily. I didn't feel like there was a tug and pull between two directors.
Yes, that's true. It felt still very cohesive, and it didn't lose any of its aesthetic and kind of style that these three films have going on. And we already acknowledged that there is a tonal shift here. So yeah, it doesn't lose its Mad Maxness. I did read that George Miller decided to have a director help him because he was still grieving the loss of his friend and producer Byron Kennedy, who apparently died in a helicopter crash. I didn't dig too much into it. I don't know if you have, but I know at the end of the film it said for Byron, so that was his decision to bring in someone else to make this happen while he was trying to still grieve.
Yeah, he was the co-creator of the Mad Max series, so you have to expect a deep relationship there. That's terrible. I had no idea.
I understand why you will want to bring someone along to make sure things make sense, I guess. But I like how these three movies sort of come full circle. And yes, we do lose a little bit of that myth, a little bit of that legend that Mad Max is in this third film. But I do like that we gain some hope, especially including these children. We gain this human need for connection instead of that just lonesome Mad Max. But we still keep that a little bit because he doesn't go off and fly with them. He's still a little bit of a legend. We have Savannah, the girl, still tells stories about him in her tells. She's still keeping his legend alive. And, we don't lose Mad Max's character a lot. He doesn't all of a sudden become this dad figure or this leader or this awesome person. He still has those traits where he's pretty much an ass at times.
Yeah, but he can't help but to help.
So I like that we kind of went from him losing his family, becoming this, depressed, lonesome fighter, to now kind of being hopeful and being reminded that humanity is something to fight for.
And on top of that, we get a little bit of hope and mercy through, we see Aunty Entity spare Mad Max too.
Why does she spare him? We know she's not anything like Toe Cutter and Humongous. She's actually someone who's smart, intelligent. She's a leader, and she's not a leader by force like the other two are. They're bigger physically, and they might be meaner and quick to beat the shit out of you, but there's something different to her. She's a different kind of bad guy. I wouldn't even call her a bad guy like I would call the other two. But I don't know if I get enough of her to truly capture what type of person she is to know exactly why she didn't kill Max. Because the last thing she says is, "Ain't we a pair?"
I think we get a little bit of an unspoken parallel between her and Papagayo from Mad Max 2, where Papagayo acknowledges him being an honorable man, someone with dignity, and she calls him a soldier at the end, right before she walks away, indicating some kind of honor and perhaps chivalry and someone worth keeping alive when you know you've lost. You know, she's not a sore loser. She also has dignity.
Yeah. She respects him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is she going to do? She lost. She's just going to kill him in cold blood? No, she wants order. She wants to bring back some kind of governance.
Yeah, so I guess when she says, ain't we a pair, she's pretty much saying we're the same. They both want these things as well. Him rescuing the kids, obviously, means that he wants something more for this society, this world we're in.
Yeah, and him rescuing Master.
That's true, yeah.
From her crimes. She's mistreating this man. So there's almost an acknowledgement of, maybe I was wrong. You know, maybe I went a little too far kind of thing, too. Because someone like her who wants the things she wants shouldn't box someone up in pig shit.
Yes, that's very true.
Just to kind of get some kind of totalitarian power over, over Bartertown. We'll never know, but perhaps she thinks that there should have been a better orders of operations to negotiate some kind of relationship between someone like her and someone like Master Blaster. I will say, speaking of Master Blaster, I didn't like the turn of heart for Mad Max when he saw Blaster without his helmet and how he's just an idiot, kind of childlike minded person, and just seeing his face kind of changed his heart. I was just like,
You weren't there for
I
that.
wasn't there for that.
Oh my gosh, that's probably my favorite scene. Mad Max is no longer this heartless thing. He has a heart. He's evolving. He's being hopeful.
I know he had a heart, though, from way back when.
He's not here for unfairness. And I do agree that that's a little bit of a different Mad Max, because Mad Max is our untraditional hero. And here he feels a little bit more traditional hero, having that soft spot for the, dumb looking man-child, having the soft spot for the kids. So I do agree that there's a little bit of a difference there. I like it though. But I do like that Aunty Entity has a lot more personality than the other two guys. And she's got a better motive. I don't know if it's a bigger motive, but she's got a better motive than the other two. Maybe it's a little bit more specific. She has a vision. She knows what she wants. And the other two are just trying to survive. Although she's trying to survive too, but the other two are just so narrow-minded on, let's just get gasoline to move on to the next time we need more gasoline. So I like that she's a little bit more developed.
I mean, of course, we have Toeketter, who's just the loud leader of the group friend. And then we have Humongous, who's the tribe leader. And then we have Aunty Entity, who is not the leader of any tribe. She's trying to govern a town where people can come in and out and perform more civilized practices like trading. They even had a brothel. That implies some kind of actual profession kind of going about, not just trading goods.
They have jobs here.
They have jobs here. It's much bigger. Is it better? That's not our place to say. We're not philosophers or God, right? So it's definitely bigger, though, and much more interesting. And it's why I think you can very clearly see the fallouts and the rages and things popping out of this much more significantly. And because I think there was a little cafe. Oh, there was a cafe, too, called Atomic Cafe.
That's right.
Couldn't you have seen that in Philly?
Yes.
In the new Fallout series? Of course.
I also like this very thin line between being civilized and being savage that we have going on here in Bartertown. It's just funny that she's trying to be civil. She's trying to be a leader. She's trying to implement rules. But the rules are 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. Very simple rule, but it's a little savage. And then bust the deal, face the wheel. And then on the wheel, you have brutal things, savage things.
Yeah, I didn't see everything that was on the wheel. There may have been one just, let them go.
Let them go.
It's all about setting the precedent, right? It's like affirmative action where we need to be real dramatic in the beginning to enforce change culturally and subconscious, not just through some kind of totalitarian nonsense.
That's true, because I like when they all turn to her and they're repeating that back at her when they're not letting Max go. They're like, hey, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. And then I was like, okay, yeah, what are you going to do about that? Like, how is she going to solve this? And then she comes back with the other one, bust the deal, face the wheel. I was like, damn, that's so savage.
That's their First Amendment.
Yeah, which rule trumps the other rule? But speaking of that, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. You mentioned earlier in the episode that this film is probably the most culturally impactful. And that's true, because apparently this quote is referenced in a lot of places. I was reading that there's a SpongeBob episode, and I know you know it. It's when they have that fry cook face off and they're making the burgers and SpongeBob spends his time all on one.
With Neptune?
Yeah. The announcer says 2 competitors enter, 1 competitor leaves, which is hilarious and it's something I would have never gotten as a kid. And then apparently it's graffitied somewhere in Fallout New Vegas.
Oh, very specific, yeah.
Yeah.
Or very literal, I should say.
And then it's like sprinkled in somewhere in Borderlands 3. So there's like a lot of places that this is actually referenced. I was like, oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Borderlands is obviously influenced to it. I didn't think about that.
I mentioned that when the blaster's face is uncovered is one of my favorite scenes. But the scene that follows it, it's pretty brutal. And it made me think about some of the brutal scenes that are in this movie. So along with his death, there's a scene where Max punches Savannah. And we don't really know how old she is, but we know she's somewhere in her like teens, like 16 and 19 along there. And it made me think about how controversial this scene must have been back then. Because even now, this type of scene is super rare. Besides maybe women being in hand-to-hand combat with a male, you don't see many scenes where a grown-ass man punches a girl in the face. The only thing that came to mind for me was when Drax decks that little girl with the kickball, or with a ball, I guess it wasn't a kickball, in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But then she's a different alien species, and so is he, so, you know, lines are blurred a little bit. I don't know about you, but I was pretty shocked that happened then.
Yeah, I was like, put that bitch in her place.
No, you weren't.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because the shot is still on his hand for a few seconds before he punches her. There's a little bit of a delay there. He doesn't just deck her.
Yes.
I'm just like, what? Is he about to throw punch her or something? It looked like some kind of kung fu or something about to happen. I don't know, and then he just decks her in the face.
It's like when you're driving and your mom like sticks her hand in the back and starts like whacking it to see who she lands on when, you know, the kids are misbehaving. So it's like that action of her hand just going back and you're like, oh shit, something's gonna happen, and then bam, she decks one of you. It's like he raised his hand like, you ready for this? And then bam. It was pretty crazy. Of course, it was sad watching that horse all dead and dried up there, you know.
That was cool.
I don't know about cool. But horse brutality in movies, man. Napoleon, Sisu.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jesus Christ. And then the last scene with the little kid getting swallowed by the quicksand. He was gone. He was a goner.
I don't even know if it was quicksand. It kind of reminded me of like undertow currents in the water and stuff, and like it can just pull little people under.
Dang.
That was it.
It started to pull the horse in and Max.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a thing that happens in deserts. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
Where you just get these soft spots at the bottom of dunes and people get pulled under. Like
yeah,
little whirlpools.
Yeah, and why doesn't this happen in Dune, the movies?
Because they know the sand dance, obviously.
Oh.
They don't disturb the sand. They respect it. They haven't figured that out yet here.
That's true. They haven't figured out the dance.
My favorite part of the film is this biblical size prophecy around the kids and how the kids speak about it and everything and how they perform it and everything. That's my favorite part of this whole movie.
Yes.
I almost wish we could have gotten maybe another 10 minutes with them, but it may have drug on a little bit because of Max's reaction, because he was so disinterested. He would humor them for a minute and just basically roll his eyes and walk away. How many times can we do that? I'm not sure, but when they pulled out the image of him with his hair and the gray above his ears and the monkey next to him, it's just like, what? This is unmistakably him.
Yes.
Which does feed into the legend, I must say. They just go about it in a little bit of a different way in this film. So maybe it is additive in that way.
Yeah, and I love the whole sequence with the kids. I love when they were showing him who Captain Walker is and Captain Walker's wife. And it looked nothing like him, and the wife was just some
random showgirl dancer.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And they're like, "Oh, that's his wife." And then they were showing it to him in that little picture spinning thingy toy that everyone had in the early 2000s, whatever that thing is called. And then we have the scene towards the end when the kids finally listen to what the vinyl says, and it's basically a how to speak French. And it tells them that they are going home, and they just have this moment, and it was so sweet. That was my second moment where I almost cried.
That is a really great moment. It's a really sneaky moment too. It's probably my second favorite moment too, but both of those moments are probably my favorite moments of the whole Mad Max trilogy.
Because I didn't know where they were going to take that. I didn't know if we were about to disappoint these kids. But we didn't. We kept the hope alive. And I like that. Because the whole representation of these kids is keeping the hope alive in the face of adversity. And also the power of storytelling. And the power of keeping things alive with stories. And in a sense, keeping their homes alive. And also keeping Max alive with stories.
There's something kind of profoundly transcendent just within these trilogy of movies about just that and how important it is to remember.
Yeah. Memory. Yeah. So I think these kids represent so much, including being vulnerable and that human need for connection. Which I like that it's all represented, for the most part, in her speech that she gives at her tell. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I must say, after sitting with this third film for a little bit, I think it's maybe in between the first and second for me.
Okay.
Because I like the parallels in the second one so much. They're just so explicit and over the top that they're just fun in that way. But this one does tap into something special in another way that the first one really doesn't for me. But I will say the chase sequence, like we get in the second one, a lot like it actually, is way less interesting.
And this one?
Yes. The sequence
Really?
itself, but what happens during the sequence, the character interactions and some of the performative bits are, meaningful. They're not meaningful in the second one. It's all just craziness and high octane.
Yes, which I guess I can't say it enough, is what shifts the tone so much in this movie. Because we don't get any kind of car chases until an hour and 20 minutes into the movie. And I guess it's not even a car, right? It's a train.
Yeah, that kind of thing feels maybe very anime. And that how are we going to incorporate this, but it needs to be a little bit bigger.
Yes.
A train.
Let's add a train. But you're right. The interactions here are a little bit more heartfelt. They're funnier. We know these characters. We've come to like these characters. We've even come to love some of these characters. Like the guy who they saved that was tied up. I don't know his name. But he's the one driving the train. He's the one conducting the train, I guess. He's not really driving.
Yeah, the prisoner.
Yeah, the prisoner.
The pig shit prisoner.
Yes.
Who just stole a pig to try to feed his family.
Yes.
And he got thrown in prison.
And he's very charming. So the interactions are a lot more meaningful. In the second one, we have characters there from the little compound, but we don't know their names. We don't know who they are. We know there's a girl and a guy on top. One guy's catching on fire, which is just crazy, but I don't care whether he lives or dies. The only one that you mildly care for in the second one, whether he lives or dies, besides Max, is the child. But that's about it. Here, you want them all to survive. Last thing I want to do is give a shout out to the props and costume designs. I guess you could kind of combine them because all these characters had props on them. The headgear was cool for all the characters, especially Aunty Entity. She had this I thought they were earrings at first, but I think that was part of her headgear. And it was just like a headband that looked like they were earrings. I don't know. That was pretty cool. Everyone had the shoulder pads, so they were all like rock stars. But the guy with the girl mannequin on his back, who thinks that? What is that? The Thunderdome itself was cool. I like how everybody was just around it. And if you were at the wrong place where someone was going to stab, you got stabbed and you were dead and that was it for you. The wheel looked cool. I also didn't get to read everything that was on it, but it looked cool. And that oversized mask thing they gave him when they exiled him, it reminded me of that Lord Farquaad mask that guy wears, I guess, when he's in Duloc. He goes through the line.
All right, man. Well, thank you for watching the third Mad Max with me and talking about it here today. Hopefully you like what's to come.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited. I'm a Mad Max franchise fan. MMF.
Do you have a budget guess?
My budget guess is $4 million. Take it as you will.
It says on the Wikipedia that it was $10 million.
Ooh! George Miller might know how to spend some money, but the other George might not.
And it went on to make $36 million. So it did pretty well. And over on Letterboxd with 165,000 people, they weighed in at a 3.0.
I think I'm giving this a 3.5. I will stick to my 3.5 for Mad Max. And I'm giving Mad Max 2 a 3. I think that's what I'm going with.
I think I'm leaning on a 2.5.
But this might change when we watch the next one.
Well, thanks again for talking about this movie with me here today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with brand new episodes of the Filmsteins on patreon.com/Filmsteins, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come request a movie, come subscribe. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmsteins. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmsteins, and follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching, keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmsteins signing off.